talk about emotions having consequences, that implies a particular sort of sequence to how these components go together, right? So the intuition is that you see something or something happens, and then you have the emotion, and then you have the behavioral response, and that's the time order. But that model was really called into question by one of the founders of psychology, William James, who suggested that perhaps things happened in a different order. He suggested that you had a kind of behavioral response first, and then you had the subjective experience of the emotion. So he said, we don't weep because we're sad because we weep, right? So it's putting that the physiology and the behavior as the leading indicator, and the subjective experience is coming after it. But James was very controversial, and other people have come up with yet even other theories about how these components go together in time.
That's right. So Cannon and Bard both came up with theories which were essentially saying the same thing, saying it wasn't that, as James has said, that we essentially have the physiological response and then the emotion. These guys said, look, both of these things happen at the same time. We have the stimulus, maybe we see a snake, and then we both simultaneously have a fear and have the physiological response. And that theory was also influential for a while until the 1960s, when Daniel Schachter came up with a theory which was called the attribution of arousal. And the idea behind this is that essentially the two things happen. So you see a stimulus, and that causes arousal, physiological arousal, and then the context surrounding that arousal allows you to label what kind of emotion it is you're feeling. And one way to think about this is in the context of a very famous experiment done in the 1970s. And here you can see, if you look on the screen now, you will see a very tall, rickety suspension bridge, which has a long span over a deep ravine. And this was in the 1970s. And let me tell you how the study was run. And I'm going to ask you to make a prediction about how it turned out. So standing in the middle of this tall, swaying suspension bridge was an attractive female researcher who was stopping men who were crossing the bridge and asking them to take part in a survey on their environmental perception. So how do you think, do you like trees, or I don't know what the questions were, but it was a survey about the environment. And then this same researcher in a similar location did exactly the same thing on a low and sturdy bridge. Again, it's the same researcher stopping people as they cross the bridge and asking, okay, what do you think about the environment? And for both groups of people, the researcher said, okay, and in case you have any questions about this later, here is my phone number. Now remember, this is before cell phones, before the internet, so really the only way to contact somebody was to ring up their phone, which would have been in their home. So what the researchers were pretending the study was about environmental influences, but what it was really about was seeing, look, will more of the participants call up the female researcher and ask her on a date in the tall bridge study or in the low bridge study? What
actually happened in this study is that the participants were much more likely to call this experimenter up and ask her out if they had met her on the high rickety bridge than on the low sturdy bridge. And how can we understand that result? Well, it makes sense from the perspective of this kind of attribution or labeling theory. So the idea here is that when you're on the high rickety bridge, you have an arousal to that, right? You're sweaty, your palms are sweaty, you're nervous, and that's induced by being up high. But because you have this other piece of context, which is that you've met this experimenter, you're more likely to attribute that arousal to being attracted to her than you are to attribute it to the bridge condition. So this is why every dating show they're not like, let's go have, a nice cup of tea. They're like, let's go paragliding. Yes, exactly. Right. And this is why for first dates, people are more likely to go on Ferris wheels and to go see scary movies, right?
All those pictures we have of people in haunted houses, right? There's often couples in haunted houses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then they get aroused from that and attribute it to their partner, which they think, okay, and my heart's beating, I'm sweating, I must be in love with this person.
Yeah, exactly. So this attribution of this Schachter's theory that we can attribute our arousal to lots of different things, and these things can be things that we attribute as negative. I'm up on a scary bridge and this is bad, or positive, I'm with the hot experimenter and I'm really attracted to her, can help us make sense of another puzzle of emotion, which is that people deliberately pursue emotions that might initially seem negative. So we saw haunted houses. Like, why would you go see Saw movies, right? Like, why do we seek out scary things? We actually have a video of people doing just this. And what we want you to pay attention to is how the people in this video are likely attributing their arousal. So let's go to that video now. Okay, so there's at least one person in the studio audience who's grinning ear to ear, and then there's many people writing in saying, "My hands are so sweaty watching this. Please never play this again. I feared for their lives the whole time." And there was one facial expression where when the girlfriend is set up, like one of the people in the audience was like, this is poor life choices on the part of this woman. Okay, so what's happening here is that these people are attributing the arousal that they're experiencing in these situations where they are at risk of falling to their doom as this is fun, this is thrill, right? And the line between fun and scary, or thrilling and scary, is really hazy.